Hello and welcome. Moving straight on with your comments and questions. I'll talk about those today. The first one, actually it's a more recent one, but a good warm-up question with regards to posture and meditation. So I quite like these. I like all of your comments and questions really, if they're related to Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Outside of that area, not so much, but mostly they are, so good. I use half lotus pose to meditate, but I get numbness in 30 minutes. Shall I continue meditation with numbness, or shall I change legs? Second question. Let's deal with the first question then first. Okay, well, half lotus position, as instructed by the Buddha, and some may disagree with this, but from the tradition I have trained in, we adhere to the word of the Buddha, and it is one has one's right foot on left thigh, so there's no option for changing legs. Now I understand that this is in relation to aspects of our skeletal structure, which does have, it is handed left and right, and this has been practiced and devised over millennia as being the best posture for meditation. So in half lotus, my right foot is on my left thigh, knees touching the ground, bottom touching the ground. Now, so there's, if you can bear with the numbness, bear with the numbness. The worst that will happen is when you get up, you'll be a bit wobbly. It's not really painful, it's more discomfort, isn't it? If you get cramps, it's a different matter. One might need to move. It's not torture. This is supposed to be enjoyable. So, to avoid getting numbness, I'm not sure, I can't see from your description how you're sitting. Ensure that your back is straight with your ears in line with your shoulders in line with your elbows here, your hands on your lap, left hand tucked in towards your belly button, right hand on top of that, thumbs just touching. None of this posture, fingers touching thumbs on the knees, therefore extending your elbows forward and pulling your shoulders forward. Not good. Like this. It's more relaxed, supportive, and natural. It should be natural and comfortable. If, and I don't know whether you are or not, you are sitting on a soft mat, cushion, bed, thick carpet, this will be, if you're sitting in this half lotus posture correctly, this will be the cause of the numbness, because the folds of the material, the softness beneath, create little pressure points in your blood flow around what is connecting you with the floor. If you are sitting, as I am, on just a grass mat on a hard tiled floor or a concrete floor, this posture is designed, has been thought out in a way such that you do not cut off any blood supply. It's as simple as that. As soon as you introduce foreign objects, cushions, soft mats, even these square mats they have in all temples, I try to avoid them. It's very difficult for monks because we have to have certain layers. It's part of the monastic hierarchy, and even lay people want you to be on layers higher and higher. This just makes it more difficult to meditate. If you're sitting on a flat concrete floor, you won't get the numbness in the first place. Now the second, and I don't know, you could be doing that, in which case just adjust the posture a little bit. Not much is necessary to avoid that numbness. You may just have to lean a little to the left, a little to the right. If your spine is vertically, imagine a spirit level, a thing that one would use in maybe building or carpentry or something like that, keeping your spine upright. If it has a natural inclination, don't push against that. Let it go the way it's natural to lean. But don't be leaning forward or backwards or sideways unnecessarily, because this is also creating, as you trial and error, on a flat floor you can easily feel where you're cutting off the blood supply. If I lean to the right now, I'm going to cut the blood supply off in my right buttocks, to the left, and so on. Forward, my right or left calf. You know, it's trial and error. Be aware of the body, understand the body, know the feelings that are being fed back to your conscious awareness, and deal with it, rectify the problem. You have all the time in the world, even if it takes your entire 40 minutes, 1 hour's meditation time, or 20 minutes to get the posture just right. It is more important to do that at least once, twice, a few times maybe, so that on future occasions you're not interrupted by numbness or discomfort. Now, your second part of the question, which is a good one because I'm familiar with this, you get shoulder blade pain when I sit meditation for an hour. How to overcome that? So I know exactly where you mean. This is the scapula, so between the shoulder blade and the spine. Maybe you have it somewhere in this area, this pain. I used to have it quite quickly, not even an hour. It was like a knife being dug into between my spine and my shoulder blade. It was very painful and I had to endure it. I had no way of dealing with it. I didn't know what to do and no one to ask about it. But then subsequently, that was when I was first in Thailand, then subsequently, quite years later after putting up with this, and I will say it was distracting. I had the good fortune to come across a physiotherapist who was meditating with me, and I asked him about this. Now, if you have that luxury of speaking to a physiotherapist, they can very quickly, by you just lying on the floor and then poking you around, usually around your neck, find the cause of this problem. And then once you've established the cause, you can eliminate the problem. It's like establishing the cause of suffering. We can eliminate suffering by following the Noble Eightfold Path. The same prescription method of cure. So he narrowed it down very quickly, and you'll probably find it's the same. It's often, this is quite common. Actually nothing to do with my back or my shoulder, as long as you're sitting in this posture. There's a slight pinched nerve in my neck, which cannot be repaired, not easily, and it isn't necessary to do so. But when you sit, again, trial and error, tip your head just very slightly forward and to the left, if the pain is in your right shoulder blade. If it's in your left shoulder blade, tip your head slightly forward and to the right, if it's in your left shoulder blade. Now, I am by no means a physiotherapist or have any medical qualifications. This is just talking to you about my own experience. And he was only giving me the benefit of his kind help and assistance, and also not a full examination. But he very quickly identified, by just pressing on the afflicted area along my spinal column between the joints, if you push in the particular vertebrae where the nerve is pinched, the pain very quickly appears without sitting for any time in exactly that spot. So I was able to identify, he was able to identify that's where it was pinching, and when one is sitting and trying to keep your back straight, the full weight of your head is pushing down on that nerve, creating the pain in your back. So a very slight movement like that. And you'll see when I'm meditating, I'm just slightly like that. It's not even visual, I shouldn't think. Millimeters, and then I never had this pain again. If I did this in reverse, the pain would be there for sure. So I hope that helps. If you have that benefit of a physiotherapist, they can soon find it. Otherwise, it's trial and error. So do away with the cushions if you have them, and move about a little bit and find what's causing the shoulder pain. A lot of pains we have are not, their point of origin isn't where we experience the pain. We must always remember that. It can be quite some distance away that's causing pain. Just because we have pain in our shoulder blade doesn't mean that's where the problem is. It's very often somewhere else in the spinal column. Okay, so find back to the beginning of the questions. Right, the first question is, can I explain Nibbana? Well, I think this is more a questions and answer session, so maybe I'll talk fully on the inexplicable on another occasion. Inexplicable because Nibbana is not a conditioned thing. It doesn't come as part of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching or thinking. It isn't made of the four elements. It isn't a thing, a place, a location. It is outside of our comprehension and understanding, and therefore in terms of words there have been books and books and books written on it, but it cannot be described. As the Buddha said, it is to be experienced by yourself. So that's the short answer. Hello Bhante. So I'll just try and précis this a little. Somebody has sustained a lot of abuse in their life and as a result is dependent on intoxicants, alcohol and tobacco. What advice would you give someone who wants to follow the Dharma but can't seem to break free from these things because they are a means of survival from a dark past? Okay, well, I'm sorry to hear that. It is often the case that we turn to maybe drugs, people turn to drugs and alcohol to block out, to blank out, to forget about problems, suffering, whether it's in the present or in the past, or things we're worried about even in the future. We turn to, very commonly in the West, alcohol. So you're not unique in that in that experience. We don't generally turn to intoxicants just for the sheer sake of it. We're usually trying to have more fun or block out suffering. Now, Buddhism teaches us to face suffering head on, understand its cause. And when we fully understand its cause coming from desire, we can see that by taking intoxicants to blank out bad experience, we're merely fueling more suffering by fueling the suffering of needing intoxicants. This is how they become addictive, because they give us a little bit of momentary relief or even pleasure, but next time we need more, and increasingly so, until it becomes a problem. Unfortunately, the short answer is you just, in order to follow the Dharma successfully, you have to give up. Now, if you say tobacco, that's okay, that isn't actually considered an intoxicant. And if you want to give up alcohol, don't try and give up smoking first, because it will just make it quite difficult. You're giving up two things at the same time. The worst of the two would be alcohol. So try and tackle that head on first. Get professional help, speak to your GP, or join a local group with some other people who can support you in that endeavour. If you are dependent, then don't go, as they say, cold turkey and stop immediately. Reduce slowly or take again medical advice. I don't know you and I don't know the position you're in currently, and also I'm not really qualified to advise on exactly on such matters. There are people that are. It's difficult, but it will make you stronger, because it will help you see very evidently, very clearly, how desire causes suffering, how we are driven. And there's no way of seeing it more clearly than when you successfully give up an addiction. When you have successfully given up an addiction, such as alcohol, you are much better placed for renunciation in the future. Giving up becomes your new addiction. Letting things go becomes your new addiction. And after all, that is what we're striving to do in this practice. Not just the case of letting go, but this is what helps us attain to Nibbana, being free from suffering in this lifetime. By being able to let go of these crutches, these supports that we rely on to distract ourselves from the truth of suffering. Why distract ourselves from it when we can actually eliminate it, reduce it, by not running away from it, not by burying it, not by suppressing it, but by understanding its cause. Much like the pain in your shoulder, the gentleman's shoulder blade, find the cause and the pain will go away. And the cause is desire, thirst, craving, tanha, we call it in the Pali. And this is all about addiction, how it works, getting this little bit of pleasure and then wanting more of that. But as we know, you need more and more of this distraction, in this case alcohol, each time. And this is where it becomes a problem. This is the cycle of addiction. It's no more plainly explained than in the 12 points of dependent origination, which I will talk about again soon. I've heard many people recently say that they don't like to talk about it because it's quite complicated. It is, in technical terms, can be considered complicated, but certainly in Thailand, lay people also chant the Pachittiya Samuppada Sutta on a regular basis, every night in the monastery where I was living for 7 months, because it's a good reminder of the 12 links of dependent origination. And when one continually reminds oneself of those, you can look it up in the Watman Marpjan chanting book. I think it's page 136 or something like that, 136, Pachittiya Samuppada Sutta. In the index it comes under probably paritas, I don't know why, or suttas, I'm not sure. It's a sutta really. But find it and read it. It's a step-by-step guide to addiction. We just eliminate those steps, and this is how we go about reducing, eliminating desire. So, no quick, easy answer. What would you give someone who wants to follow Dharma but can't seem to be free from these things? Well, what advice would I give you? My advice would be to really concentrate and work on trying to give up this problem that you have. Then you will be free to really appreciate the Dharma. Whilst you're continuing to, and it's not just about breaking the 5th precept, because it's a precept, it's not a rule, these are supportive to the practice. By taking intoxicants, we are unable to attain samadhi. You may think so. We may think, I've had lots to drink, I'm now in a really blissful, joyous state. That is just being drunk. That is, anybody can do that with enough money and enough beer or wine. Get into a blissful state of rapture. The point of practice in terms of meditation is that we can experience this freedom from suffering, this blissful state and rapture, without these additional aids, without that expense, without that the harmful effects, and without the cycle of addiction beginning, which only creates this ultimately insatiable desire. You often mention renunciation. What do you mean by renunciation? I've just spoken about that again. I've mentioned it. Giving up. That's it. All it means, giving up. A renunciant is somebody who's given up the worldly life, is usually referring to household life. In the process of ordination, or even leading up towards it in the various stages, by taking additional precepts over and above the 5, to support that practice of sila, samadhi, panya, or samadhi, and the development of wisdom through sila, the 5 precepts, we take on additional precepts. So giving up entertainment, beautification, eating in the afternoon, giving up sleeping in high and luxurious places. This is the 8 precepts. Then the 10 precepts where we give up the use of money. And then eventually as a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni, we have 227 precepts or 311 respectively. This is to really support the keeping of that body of sila, but to support our practice and enable us to attain deep absorbed states of samadhi by having no distraction, by giving up what is unnecessary in our lives and living with just what we need, the simple basic 4 requisites of food, robes, shelter and medicine, and the very few possessions we need, and we keep our 3 robes, our bowl, razor, water filter, needle, cotton, belt. That's it, our 8 requisites. We need nothing more. in our lives. So we give up everything. This is renunciation. I'm contemplating ordination. I have sleep apnea and must use an electronic device to help me breathe during my sleep. Is this allowed as a monk? Well, it's not specifically not allowed. It wouldn't be something that came into the Vinaya. The rules are very old, and this wouldn't have been, this equipment wouldn't have been available in the time of the Buddha. You'd need to speak to the specific monastery where you're going, but also I just refer back to previous talks. One needs to be physically healthy, bodily and mentally, in order to ordain. We are asked that at ordination, but it is essential because it is not an easy life. It's not a way to retire. It is not a way to run away or get away from suffering. It's a way to increase suffering in a controlled manner, in a supportive structure, in order that we can face that suffering head on. Like I just said, we're not running away from suffering, suppressing it, distracting ourselves from it. We are facing it head on. If we have health problems, that's going to be difficult. It's also going to put a burden on your fellow Sangha members, other monks or other nuns, whom would have to support you if you're in ill health. Now, obviously, we get ill health later on in life after ordination, but this is enough for us monks to deal with and support those that become ill through aging, sickness, and ultimately death. We have those people, those monks, fellow Sangha members to deal with. We don't want to bring people in who are already ill. This is a practical issue, nothing more than that. Only you know your own health. If you can safely and easily manage your condition by whatever means, then I'm sure it's okay. But also remember, these kind of things are technology that maybe break down in humid conditions. You may not have electricity all of the time, but where are you? And people often keep asking me about ordination, but don't say where they are. If you're in the UK or in America, it's probably a lot easier to give this consideration than if you're in the jungles of Thailand or here even in Sri Lanka, because the equipment will break and you can't just go to the shops and replace the batteries or get a new one sent to you by courier quickly if necessary. So one must give consideration to all of these things. Have you seen The Matrix and Star Wars? And in respect to, I won't read the whole question, it's spiritual content, and is that a good way to lead teens and people into the Dharma? I think that's what you're saying. I haven't seen either of those films. I think I'm possibly the only person of my generation, which is the Star Wars generation, that's never even seen Star Wars, let alone the rest of the films. I don't know why that is. I think at school, everybody was going to see all the Star Wars movies as they came out. Everybody was talking about it, and I just was the oddball who thought, well, I can't be bothered with it, and I didn't. So I've not seen Star Wars. I have heard of The Matrix. It's been referred to by monks in Dharma talks even, and I'm sure it's very interesting, but no, I haven't seen these movies. The best way to introduce anyone to the Dharma is the word of the Buddha, and that is reading or listening to or having people talk to you about the suttas, the word of the Buddha. He did it in a very clear, concise and simple way, so why complicate the issue? This is how we introduce people to the Dharma. It's how the Buddha introduced people out of his infinite compassion to the Dharma successfully, because it continues 2,567 years later. So we don't need Steven Spielberg or anybody else to help with the Buddha. He was good enough at teaching himself. Who is an English monk? Well, like I said yesterday, Buddhism has no nationality, but who is an English monk? Well, this is the name of this channel, isn't it? I am Bhante Dhammarakkhita Bhikkhu, is my Pali given name. And the full description as to who I am, where I came from, is in the description under this video and under all of the videos. Not such a full description in the channel description. I don't know why, but you can't get a full description in there. You can only get half of it or something. But that's who I am. I'm no one particularly, just a monk sharing his experience of practicing in this form with you. How can I ordain at the same vihara as you, Bhante? Well, I don't live in a monastery where there are people to ordain monks, and often that is the case. Where you live isn't where you ordain. But if you want to ordain in the same monastery as me, go there. It's in Bangalore, the Mahabodhi Society, Bangalore, and you can ask them. Say you would like to ordain and become a monk. Once you've watched my video on how to become a monk and see what it really means and how difficult it is. There are 2 videos on here, how to become a monk, and also I think how to become a monk and why not, or something like that. The links have been posted there somewhere, I think, by other people. If anyone gets the opportunity to post them again, if they know them or can copy and paste them, that would be very useful, thank you. Watch those. It's not, like I've just said, an easy life. It's not running away. It takes many years. Also, if you were to turn up in Bangalore tomorrow, you're going to probably have to work hard for a couple of years before you even get anagarika ordination, which is the very first taking of 10 precepts. You may then be an anagarika for some years before you're a novice monk, and then some years before you're able to ordain as a bhikkhu. All depending on your age and experience and where you're from. But it isn't a quick fix to anything, and there's no fast track ordination that is, well, if there is, then that's not the way to do it, because you need to really understand, as I've spoken about quite a lot recently, what you're doing when you're taking up a life of renunciation, giving up the household life. One question I have: what is the Buddhist method to deal with feeling tired? I've heard of some monasteries holding all-night sitting sessions. Surely there is a perspective on fatigue that helps one overcome it. So the third hindrance in meditation and everything in our lives really is tiredness. They call it sloth and torpor in old-fashioned English, but tiredness, laziness, lethargy, nodding off really in meditation. Well, the teachings of the Buddha are quite clear. They take some deep breaths, maybe open your eyes for a moment, get some light in, or if you're really dozing off, then just after you've given it a bit of a go, get up and practice walking meditation for a little while and then come back to sitting meditation later. But there's no better cure than having enough sleep in the first place. As long as you've had sufficient sleep and you haven't had a real busy day at work and then you sit to try and meditate, then you should be able to sit for 40 minutes to an hour, as long as you're sitting in an upright posture, as I described at the beginning of this video, and not slouching about on cushions. Then it isn't actually very comfortable. It's not uncomfortable, but it's not comfortable enough to doze off. So make sure you're sitting correctly. Correct your posture if you're not. And take some deep breaths before you start. You can use other things, go and splash water on your face. The Buddha even prescribes, the prescribed Buddhist method is pulling your ears. I'm not sure it really works, I've tried it. But get enough sleep. Now you talk about what's called nisichik, is all-night sitters practice. Now this is on lunar observance nights practiced in many monasteries, or by monks even alone. I practice it sometimes myself, sit up all night. But unless you're a monk or you have the next day off work, I wouldn't recommend it. It isn't easy to successfully or perform adequately the following day if you've been awake all night. If you have limited duties, as monks do, then it's not much of a problem. And we are used to it, and it is quite an invigorating exercise. It does in fact give you more energy, kind of stimulates everything. Twice a month, sitting up all night, even once a month. It's easier to do on the full moon because it's brighter and we feel a little more enthusiastic, I think, than on the new moon. So I choose probably and only do it these days on the full moon, one of those coming up on the 24th or 23rd. And that posture, I'll sit up all night and just meditate, and probably won't need any more sleep the next day. But my sleep is, I don't sleep too much. Get your sleep pattern into a good rhythm. And if you're working, you're probably going to need 6 to 8 hours a night sleep. If you're not working, you're retired or you're a monk, then you only need 4 hours really at the most. Because this is sufficient when you are practicing meditation for many hours a day, which is far more restorative than sleep itself, because you are really giving your body the opportunity to settle and relax, the mind to settle and become calm and tranquil, more so than even in what could be restless sleep most of the night, and only restorative during a very short period of that time when you think you're asleep. The rest of it is tossing and turning and dreaming and thinking. So, in that respect, yes, get enough sleep in the first place. Other than that, it's just determination. But it's about posture. If you're leaning one way or the other, you will nod off. If you're keeping this erect spine, energy will flow and you will remain awake. And keep that attention on the breath, keep interest in the breath, and enjoy the breath as it's invigorating as you breathe in. Enjoy its refreshing, quenching qualities, and as you exhale, its purifying and calming qualities. As you exhale all of that exhausted, used breath, and notice the temperature of the breath, cool as you breathe in, warm as it's attained to body temperature as you exhale. This builds interest into the breath and keeps you wide awake. What is acceptable to sleep on? Anything you like. If you're a lay person, it really doesn't matter. Whatever you need. We take the precept of to refrain from sleeping in high luxurious beds when we're on 8 precepts living in a monastery. I sleep on this mat, which is a grass mat on a hard floor, and have done for many years. And I'm used to that, would find a bed quite uncomfortable. That isn't necessary, though. This is just additional supportive practices that monks adopt through part of their renunciation to help with their practice of samadhi and the development of wisdom. This is part of monks' rules, monks' life. One shouldn't try and find this halfway between the two. Whilst you're staying in the monastery, yes, take 8 precepts, and that is good. But if you're living and working in the world, the Buddha has designed the 5 precepts to be, well, if you're not able to keep 5 precepts, please don't try and, some actually, you could avoid entertainment. That will help with keeping the 5 precepts, because you'll avoid some unwholesome mental activity of seeing, hearing visually and listening to what you're listening to. But other than that, keeping the 5 precepts can be quite difficult for some people on their own. So don't extend beyond that until you're comfortable with keeping the 5 precepts. Then you can, to be supportive of those, extend to the 8 precepts. But if you're working, it's difficult. And if you're in a relationship, it's difficult. You need to be perhaps sleeping in an ordinary bed, and there's nothing wrong with that. Dear Venerable, many Buddhist monks have YouTube channels that are ad-free due to the title of this subject, and the ad was very sensual and really not aligned with the Dharma. Well, this channel should be ad-free. I do have that option, and I have selected that option. All my videos do not have advertisements in them. What happens before my video starts or after the video finishes, I have no control over. That's down to YouTube. And it's not also relevant to the content of the video. YouTube pick advertisements, as I understand, dependent on the viewer's interests. So I've had this question before. Why is your video surrounded by adverts about, I don't know, beer and dancing ladies. This was from a gentleman who had a lot of interest in beer and dancing ladies, and that's obviously what his search has been about in the past, and somehow, I don't know, Google, YouTube, work it all out, and they're going to advertise things you're interested in. If you're interested in horses, you'll get adverts about horses. Whether you're watching my video about Dharma or not, it's looking at everything you look at. If you only look at Dharma, you get, I'd imagine, very little advertising, because and what happened in this particular case, I don't know. I'm not sure, I can't explain. I have something called YouTube Premium, so there's no adverts at all, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to watch my Dharma talks that I rely on to listen to the Dharma from my teachers, both in my own monastery and other monasteries, if they were interrupted by advertisements, or even if they had advertisements before and after that I was forced to watch in order to see the main video. It would be, I think, unskillful for me to be using YouTube. So I have the benefit for a small subscription of what is called YouTube Premium, which I thank and grateful to all of your donations and kind support for, to enable me to have that, so that I can listen to the Dharma uninterrupted by any form of advertising whatsoever. I'm also able to download, because I have YouTube Premium, those Dharma talks, so that I can listen to them when I don't have any internet, which is quite often also. So yeah, I could recommend that, but I can't do anything about what happens before these videos or after. I've done what I can in that respect, and what I can do is I've turned all of the adverts off. So hopefully I haven't made a mistake somewhere and they've come back on again. If they have, please tell me. If there's any adverts appear in the middle of the videos, please let me know, because I've done something wrong or something's happened. Okay, so I think that's there's just one. I'll just look at this question that came as an email, as it's quite a short one. Somebody has been studying the Dharma for 20 years. Now, at age 43, your great inspiration is to become a novice or a monk. You don't have any money. Could I help you? Okay, well, it's good you don't have any money, or depending on where you are, because, yes, you've said where you are, you're from Brazil. Right, okay, well, there are some Buddhist monks in Brazil, I know some. I was at Wat Mark Jan with some Brazilians who returned to, but I guess Brazil's a big place, but you could look up locally Brazilian monks or Buddhism in Brazil if you're able to. I know you've emailed me, so I don't know whether you have much access to the internet. Somehow find access to it and Google Brazil. They might not come up. It's a case of really doing some research, going to libraries even, asking like-minded people in libraries if they've heard of any such organisations locally, and start there if you can, locally. You don't need money to become a monk. You can, if you're able to lead a life of renunciation alone, reduce your workload, start practicing meditation more, and just living simply by just taking 8 precepts, living on 8 precepts like I've mentioned before, by way as a step towards monasticism. As if again, watch those videos about how to become a monk, because they might give you some guidance in the right direction, what it entails, but it doesn't entail money. In fact, you have to get rid of all money, renounce all money. But I do appreciate you need to get from A to B. You probably need to get to a monastery. But if you're really going with a view to ordaining, you don't need anything other than yourself. You're a male, I think, and you're 43. Walk there. Get on the road, hitchhike, I don't know what one does these days. You can get there somehow. People have done a lot more in much harder times and much bigger countries in order to get to a monastery to ordain. People have gone from war-oppressed Tibet, escaping attack from outsiders, over the Himalaya mountain ridge there, into Nepal and into India, in order to remain as monks or to take up ordination in the past, walking for many months and days begging for food. It's possible if you have the determination, and only conducive to your practice and the end results. So I wish you all the best of luck with that. Please email me again if I can be of any help in other than that, but the only help I can give you is my blessings and support in your noble endeavours, and anumodana sadhu, sadhu, sadhu for wanting to ordain. So on that note, I hope there's something useful there. If there is, please use it. If not, then let it go. And thank you for watching. Be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.